good submissions, but I want to ask a question around, if we're talking of economic integration, what kind of model in terms of basic minimums should we be talking about? We have a continent where issues around the rule of law, issues around financial systems, the extent to which they are able to respond to issues of economic sabotage are a challenge across the continent, and different governments respond to this differently. And so for me, the whole issue around economic integration should not be open-ended. So let's take the example of Brexit. In the European Economic Community, before you get in and before you get out, is a huge challenge. And that is because there are benefits. And so if we have open-ended economic integration that have no implication for those, for example, who are not building infrastructure to the extent that it provides equal space for economic competition, then there's a challenge. Then we'll continue to have issues around xenophobia, because I cannot develop my economy and your own people will come and benefit from it. So there's that whole question around Pan-Africanism. The people are always complaining. Guinea, for example, the people have been talking about issues of expanding political and economic rights. Nobody was listening. Immediately there was a coup. AU came in. We have seen people like Nkurunziza in Botswana, in Namibia, and what they have done to issues around human rights. So if we don't build a Pan-Africa that have a broader vision around what we want to achieve as a continent, and people taking individual steps, it's very easy to raise sovereignty question in Africa. But when you are found on the wrong side of the ladder. So let's look at all of this and see how we build minimums that, of course, help us to integrate better as a continent. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, what to make a little question. The presenter wants to chip in a few words, so since it's online, I bet we pause for now. They have noted your questions. After his additions, the questions and submissions will continue. 2 minutes, just for 2 minutes. Thank you. So, Mr. Emmanuel, please, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Honorable. I will take this. I need to just intervene by responding to the question of money to the need. Perhaps I was too fast for what to find, but in my presentation I had mentioned as part of the launch of AFCA in 7th of July 2019, a Pan-African settlement system was adopted. That settlement system is supposed to solve, in part, the problems associated with what currency will be used to do transactions in a liberalized African market. But it's important to also mention that there are different stages of economic integration. You have the free trade area, then you have the custom union, you have the common market, and eventually monetary union. It is expected that this is an ongoing process, that by the time we get at the fourth stage, when we will have monetary union, we will now start talking of having a common currency the way Europe has done. So I needed to just put that response there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. And so the round of questions will continue and submissions as well.
I'm actually number 4. Good afternoon. I have a couple of questions to ask. Talking about inclusion, are there measures in place to prepare our small businesses to take advantage of these opportunities? And particularly talking about women inclusion, women in the informal sector. What measures are there in the first place so that they have access to the information and they are also able to prepare themselves to be able to take advantage of this? Secondly, we talked about Africa or Nigeria being an industrial hub, many of our industries owned by government are not functional and they are not working well. So what do we do to address this? And I think that considering this situation, this will be private sector driven. So what do we do to create that level ground that the presenter talked about so that our private sector, not the big multinationals, our small businesses would not be overwhelmed by the big business. And then the issue of power supply. The power sector is a huge problem. So our businesses have to be sustained within the country to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. And then finally, I work with community women, and I would like to take this particular message back. How do I start? Where do I start to ensure that the women I would like to sensitize to take advantage of this will be able to be part of this process? Thank you.
Again, Chebotoche is my name. I wish to speak on rule of law. Then earlier you said that we should teach the youth the right value. I agree. But how can you teach the youth the right value, whereas the operationalization of the rule of law is favoring and protecting a particular people? The men who have committed and sabotaged this nation are not being punished by the law. The law only punishes the poor. So how can you teach the youth the right value? Then teaching the youth the right value is good, but it should be holistic. There should be a holistic approach towards it. You should reduce the wealth gap between the rich and the poor. You should create equal access to opportunities. Then this youth will develop trust, love, and confidence in the system. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is My question is very simple. Speak to the mic. Okay. My question is very simple. And I want to know what is the idea that we put in place to stem the tide of this idea of granting tax waiver to some of the bigger or big playing companies, such as the cigarette companies of this world, as we know. Bearing in mind that they will likely use every available strategies to permeate Africa. And permeating Africa in these cases, we have two divides. One of the divides is we have the ones termed developed or maybe underdeveloping countries. And we know that under that circumstance, there is every tendency for them to be more volatile. My question is this: what are the strategies that have been put in place to make sure that these big, players will not, in any way or form, influence Africa politically using this platform as a basis?
Thank you very much. I think you touched on some parts that I wanted to say. I'm just be very brief. My question is the free trade zone that is being acclaimed as a game changer. Is it gender friendly? That is what I want to emphasize because if you talk about tax payment, the women suffer more. They are supposed to benefit from the system, but the system tends to enrich those who are to pay tax and then extort money from those who are just selling and managing to survive on the ground. So I want to really know if the game changer, the plan that will change the game is gender friendly and it has also is made in such a way that the common woman in the rural area will be able to understand the policy and take advantage of it and benefit from it. And if it's not like that, what can we do to include women in that policy?
Hon.Pirfa Tyem. I have listened this morning with keen interest, and this all the presentation made is very promising and encouraging. But my concern is, where do we place the issue of political will for African governments? All this we discussed is very beautiful. But where do we put the issue of political will for our governments, African governments? Secondly, the issue of corruption is a source of concern to me about this issue of trade liberalization. Then the issue of insecurity. If you look at the African continent now, if we deal with a lot of security issues. Those are the three issues I did discuss to help us fashion a way